30th December 2024. Out walking the dog in this gray Danish weather. We've seen the sun like twice in the last 2 weeks. But I've been thinking a lot about my work in climate, which is a lot about energy. We compose energy budgets. That is, you've got energy in, energy out, and that balance of energy, that budget, whether it's in surplus or deficit, constitutes whether the surface is heating or cooling. And in the case of snow and ice, energy budget surplus, the surface heats until the melting point, or it may or may not reach the melting point, right? Depends how much surplus energy there is. And that happens in summertime, especially, right? Because, of course, more sunlight coming down than in what I like to call the freezing season or the cold season, when the energy budget is in deficit, the surface energy budget, that to be specific. And we're working with a hemisphere above and a hemisphere below. So if you had an aperture that saw the entire hemisphere upward and the entire hemisphere downward, then you can measure these energy fluxes. And indeed, we have these type of equipment on our weather stations. I like to call them climate recorders that we put on the Greenland ice sheet. We have a network of more than 40 climate recorders on the Greenland ice sheet surface. And these tell a story, right? We're recording the surface energy budget. There are a number of components of the surface energy budget that when you study them, observe them, how do they vary during, say, a heat wave, during a rain episode, then you gain insight into what physically is going on. We call that process understanding. You gain process understanding by, I call it, listening to the data. We humans, we're kind of clever, but we're not so clever that we can understand the totality of the climate system without setting out recorders, listening to the data, observing the data, plotting the data. And it's only through the energy budget conservation of energy, a fundamental law of nature, a law of thermodynamics. First law, energy is neither created nor destroyed, conservation of energy. The second law of thermodynamics is more amazing, really. I've spent time on that since the 90s, since I was in my teens. The second law of thermodynamics, entropy. Okay, first law, energy is neither created nor destroyed. Second law is, yes, it's neither created nor destroyed, but energy flows from a high-ordered state to a low-ordered state. The thermal example of that is you put a metal rod into a fire, and the high energy, the high kinetic energy of the crystal lattice of that metal, it's vibrating at a higher kinetic energy at the hot end of the rod, and then it conducts towards low energy. And that direction of energy flow is also relates to time. Entropy, which gives the direction of energy flow, has been described as time's arrow. It gives the direction of time. It's irreversible, at least globally. And here's where it gets more interesting. And And, so I've made my career about understanding the energy budget and it giving us process understanding. We've learned, for example, that the exposure of bare ice after snow cover melts away because snow cover is more reflective than glacier ice. You get a darker surface, then that leads to more sunlight absorption and amplified surface melting. We've also learned, for example, rainfall, it delivers some heat to snow, and that has the effect of rounding the sharp ice crystal edges, and therefore light is scattered less. The surface absorbs more sunlight. It's not just about sunlight. There's cases when a very warm atmosphere, so a cloudy atmosphere, radiates more thermal energy downward than a clear sky. You'll notice this if you're out under clear sky conditions at nighttime. It gets cold. That's when you get frost forming because the surface is radiating upward more than the thermal radiation downwards, and so that would be an energy budget deficit at the surface. Okay, so all of these insights from energy and only when you get it under the condition of energy conservation, that's the fundamental constraint that we work with, that helps really understand what's going on. So I'm 30 years into this, studying energy and also mass budgets. Okay, snowfall lands, it represents a mass budget gain, and meltwater runoff or icebergs breaking off, that's a mass budget loss. And so we also use mass budgets to gain process understanding of what's happening to the Greenland ice sheet, glaciers, etc. Then just over 2 years ago, I get hit by a kind of like a philosophical comet. I get hit, and that is understanding money. I clocked over the age 50 at this time, and it's classic for people of this age to start paying attention to their economic future and their health future. And as a reward to your future self, you want to take certain steps, like to protect your health, so that your future self will thank you for that. So I'm getting more into fitness and more into understanding money, and this has been just the most surprisingly fascinating rabbit hole to go down, the money rabbit hole. What is money? And it turns out it has very strong parallels with energy conservation. At least a real money system does. Turns out that the monetary system that has been formally in effect since 1971 does not respect energy conservation. This is called the fiat system. What fiat means by decree. We've been under a money system that is by decree, as opposed to before 1971 and especially before 1917, we were on a hard money standard. What is hard money? Hard money is difficult to produce. The easy money era began around World War I, when politicians realized they couldn't convince, in this case, the English public to vote for more taxes. If the politicians put the question to the taxpayers, hey, we want to fight this great war, you're going to pay for it by sacrificing your your future economic well-being because, well, we have to win this war. That even that, powerful argument, if it was powerful, wasn't enough. So the politicians were like, well, we'll temporarily go off of the gold standard, and then we'll indirectly pay for the war through the higher cost of living that naturally comes when you issue more money into existence and you're diluting the economic power of a unit of money. That's what happens when you issue more money. On a hard money system, there's conservation of money. And actually the energy analogy is right on, because money actually represents your work time. I will build a house for you. I will dig a ditch. I will do work. I'll chop wood in exchange for money. So I'm exchanging my time and my effort, my energy for money. So money has solved this issue of, prior to that it was a barter system, and that is a very primitive way of conducting commerce. The United States formally brought the world off of the gold standard in 1971, and ever since the cost of everything has gone up. We know this as inflation. Had we remained on a hard money standard, we would not have inflation. The economic crisis really that we're undergoing now is the implosion of the fiat money system. And fortunately, there is a new technology that is bringing energy conservation back to the money system. And that's been the fascinating journey that I've been on for just over 2 years. Reading books, watching countless YouTube videos on this topic, and understanding that we are being stolen from by governments issuing money by decree. The theft is that we pay for the national budgets, which are across the world, led by the United States, in deficit. And so we have cost of living crisis around the world. And you think it's bad in the US dollar, it's just as bad in the euro, which is effectively pegged to the US dollar. It's worse in other currencies around the world. Again, you think it's bad in the West, it's much worse in the global South. So people in the global South, they understand this issue far better than most Americans, because they deal with crippling levels of inflation. So the good news here, and this is becoming mainstream, there's now an energy conservation respecting monetary network called Bitcoin that is getting smeared and has been smeared because it threatens central banks. It threatens politicians to take away their easy money printing. And thing is, nothing stops this train. You got to think about the origins of this monetary system was the 2008 financial crisis. You remember the Occupy Wall Street events. I was quite sensitive to that because my family in California got underwater on their house, and ultimately it bankrupted my mother and my stepdad. So the amount of suffering I've experienced indirectly, kind of firsthand. So we now have this technology called Bitcoin. It is a decentralized global network of so-called nodes. These are small computers that store the entire ledger. That is, all of the transactions on this network are stored on the nodes. The miners do their things because they get rewarded through their calculations, but with Bitcoin, which have value. The current fiat US dollar value of Bitcoin is around $100,000. I mean, this is an insanely valuable network. The market cap of Bitcoin is above $2 trillion now. And guess what? It's only going higher. It's demonetizing gold. It's demonetizing real estate. Wealthy people used to buy extra real estate. They don't want to put all their money into the stock market. So a lot of wealthy people they buy another house. Well, that's flipping now. And the real estate market globally is going to go into decline because people realize that Bitcoin doesn't have the maintenance issues of houses. It doesn't have the complexity of maintaining a house. What's amazing about this is that it abides energy conservation. That's, again, we exchange our time work for money. Money allows us to transfer value into the future. That's like savings technology. You can transmit value spatially, that is across the world, by sending money. This was formerly and still is achieved through this so-called SWIFT network, or apps like PayPal allowed you to transmit money spatially. And so Bitcoin is both a currency, a medium of exchange, a unit of account, and it's also a store of value. So it's, as opposed to fiat money, which is a very poor store of value because inflation drops the value of fiat money, the euro, the dollar. Bitcoin is growing, priced in fiat, because of its fixed supply. And it may be the only time that humans have invented a technology where scarcity is achieved. This asset has a fixed supply. That is not achieved by any of the other, or genuinely fixed supply. That there are a lot of other cryptocurrencies, but they are fundamentally flawed because they have rulers, they have CEOs, they have people in control that are notorious for being corrupted. Half or more of these crypto projects are scams, and that has given Bitcoin a bad name. But Bitcoin was there first, and its creator goes away, doesn't come back. It's been more than 15 years, and that was a fundamental distinction that allows this technology to maintain its value, unlike the other crypto projects. So don't fall for Bitcoin is equal to the other crypto projects. It's very different. It's also the dominant network by far. This so-called network effect, once adoption is above any of the competitors, you just can't unseat a technology that has achieved this network dominance. The network effect is like winner take all kind of thing, and so Bitcoin has won in terms of that. Plus, having its creator go away has been necessary to make it unique in history as something that can be a store of value. It takes energy to produce Bitcoin. It takes energy to do work in the real world. And effectively, this technology is a store of energy, of work time. And so it's become a very successful store of value. And Bitcoin is an energy conserving system, unlike the fiat money system that has distorted our economies severely since fiat's inception. And now this new technology, Bitcoin, is here. It's demonetizing gold, it's demonetizing real estate, it's demonetizing war. It's making forever wars unlikely to be able to be priced, because there's a revolution in people understanding what money is. And my perspective on studying energy budgets, I think, made it easier for me to begin to appreciate the profound, amazing, revolutionary breakthrough that digital scarcity has delivered to society. That's why I'm sharing this video, because I want you to know that this is a technology that is here to stay, and it's growing rapidly at a compounding annual growth rate well above 20-30%. It's actually 50% in the last decade, and it'll probably relax to a 20% compounded annual growth rate going forward. But that is far greater growth rate than the cost of living inflation rate, which is honestly above 5%. It's even though the central banks like to say that inflation is coming down. Well, as long as the inflation rate is above zero, you're losing economic power. And when you put that toe-to-toe with a technology that has a compounding annual growth rate well above 20%, then you're winning in the game of storing value. You've already worked for this money, so it's quite smart to have a non-zero Bitcoin allocation. That always seems expensive, but because it's growing in value as measured by fiat, and as fiat is failing, you can not only store value, but you can gain value with respect to fiat. The number of Bitcoin stays whatever it is. Like one Bitcoin is one Bitcoin, but it seems to be getting expensive because fiat is failing, not because it's not Bitcoin's fault that the monetary system is blowing up. That's the fault of politicians that got us off of a hard money standard. So it's smart to participate in this network. It is voluntary. You're not being coerced to do this. You can opt in. And if you choose to do so, you can benefit economically. It's that simple. So welcome to the network. It's actually something that gives me hope. I've shifted my perspective from a Malthusian to one of hope, and of course it's about energy, right? And the challenge that humanity faces is to meet its energy demands. Well, those energy demands, they're not going to go away. They will increase. And so the challenge to talk about, and I've got some ideas here, that I think I'll put in another video about solving the world's energy problems in a very sober recognition that energy demands will only increase. And that's actually quite a positive thing, because it delivers a higher standard of living around the world. Of course, we have to do everything we can to conserve environment, and I'm all for that. So we need to do environmental conservation, and the way to do that, we have to find that way while increasing energy production. You could say that, okay, the green energy can do that. Well, it's not quite enough. We have to do more. Sure, we could harness more solar, and in principle, that is the way. I think it won't be enough. There's the issue with baseload energy, but anyway, that's the topic of another video. If you made it this far into this video, you're a legend, and see you in the next video.